Everybody, welcome to Paranormal Into the Night, right here on the Late Late Horror Show. We are remembering Art Bell again, episode number 3, with Dave Plouffe, who is west of the Rockies.
I am west of the Rockies. Yeah, I called in using the AT&T operator.
If anybody remembers that, yes. The oh my God, it was so long ago. Yes, he would call in, you'd do. And then when he started going overseas, it was even more intricate.
Yes.
I'm like going, boy, the effort it took to call somebody out of the country. And now it's just boop, 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 you're good. But yes. I can't wait. Thank you for being here again, Dave. As always, as my voice kind of crackles, I'm going through puberty as always. Let me say hi to everybody in the chat real quick first, and then we'll get into all of the goodies, all of the Art Bell. And it was Art Bell's birthday yesterday, so happy.
The 18th.
Well, how old would he be? I don't even know, but it doesn't matter. Let's see. Connie Clary, Greg McCowan, how you doing? Good to see you. Been a while. MOR, Black Roses, Bubba. Sorry to hear that name changes had to happen in Discord. I don't know what's up with that. But Sears James, and yeah, I guess we'll see everybody when they come in. So yes, we were going to start off talking a little bit about what Art Bell and who he was and the show and all that. So give us a quick synopsis, Dave. Who was Art Bell, man? If nobody knows.
Yeah, I'm going to say hi to everyone in the chat as well. Okay. And hello, Harry and Black Roses and Connie and MOR and everyone. CM, nice to see you. Art Bell was an overnight talk show host, and he was throughout the U.S. and parts away from the U.S. as well. Started in the 90s is when I started listening to him. And I would tell you that maybe the peak years were about 95 to 98. And he would start normally around, at least in my area, around 10 o'clock at night and go till about 3 or 4 in the morning. He would do this at least 5 days a week. There were certain times, 7 days a week. And being in my early 20s at the time, it was better than ice cream, man. Staying up late at night, listening to what topics he had, because each night was a different paranormal topic. Yeah. Occasionally there would be, like when O.J. Simpson was going on,
the news stories.
That may have been a topic, but normally it was UFOs and aliens and reptilians and Egypt and Men in Black and just all these wonderful things. And especially as you were headed to bed and you would listen to that, Art Bell had one of those voices that would just, come around you like a hug. And just you would be entranced by what he was saying. And, normally, in quotes, his guests were really, really good. People like Linda Moulton Howe and Graham Hancock and Father Malachi Martin. He also had some people who weren't as, maybe legitimate, but he still knew how to bring that entertainment value to the airwaves.
Yeah. He was able to carry on a good conversation and bring out the best in all of his guests for sure and be entertaining. But the one thing that you said, like he was on 7 days a week, most of the time, 6 days definitely. So every single night when you went to bed, that's a personal moment, time when you're laying down, you're getting ready for sleep. And he became a family member kind of in a sort of a weird way where I just looked forward to Art Bell and what he had to say and who's going to be on every single night. Because what would I use back then? They weren't earbuds. They were just some kind of headphones or something, or I would just let it listen on the side. And, just close the eyes. And it was like you were right there with Art, just enjoying the conversation of the guest or the callers that would come on. It just was. It was fantastic. And because he did it so often, he had so many guests, Dave. So many people came on that were, you never forgot, right? So that was the thing. But
Well, we're in our third episode, and we've barely
touched the
scratched
surface.
the surface on these people.
Oh yeah, no, it's amazing. And there's even a couple names I threw out to you that you said, "Oh, I never heard that." And I'm like, "Oh, whoa, wow. How did you not like let's start right off. Harlot the Witch. You've never heard of the Harlot the Witch episode?
First time was about 5 minutes ago.
Okay, okay. And thanks everybody for being here for sure. I see you guys all in the chat. You guys can all chime in if you want for sure. We're going to touch on some. And listen, when we get to the charlatans, because there's going to be a couple in tonight's stream, I think we'll talk about. It doesn't take away from anything Art did. Listen, how can you control or even see in the future what's really going to happen? But years, and then you eventually go, you know what, that guy was a charlatan. But anyways, plus he's trying to be entertaining. Listen, he was a growing channel talking about the paranormal. Uh, he did what he had to do, and he always let people talk. That's the one thing. I kind of do the same thing too. I let people talk and tell their story. But Harlot the Witch, Dave, she called up one night, or I think, yeah, she called up, and then he had her on as a guest. I do believe that's the way it worked. It could have been a fax because back in the day, Art Bell got the fax going. The fax machine was going. Brr, brr, brr. How annoying was that? I mean, that was just crazy. But
And now we look back at it as being so antiquated.
right, right.
I'm sure he's missing out on like just checking his phone and everything. And
Oh my God. What Art Bell would be doing today, you know what I mean, with
oh
the
yeah,
technology and everything. I mean, listen, it's been how long now? 8 years, somewhere around there.
about at least 5 to 7, without a
Okay,
doubt.
somewhere around there. And nevertheless, yeah, I mean, we've
And one of the things too about Art Bell is you knew he was having a cup of coffee,
yeah,
that he was having a cigarette,
yeah,
that he
yeah,
was gluing his lips together with super glue.
yeah,
He was just like a normal guy like you and I. It wasn't like, he was really bending to corporate radio. It was just
exactly.
out here in the desert in my trailer, basically,
Hmm.
having fun and doing what he loved. And he was very lucky to do that.
Oh yeah, yeah. And CM does mention, of course, he let people talk, but knew how to get rid of someone. Yes, there were many times where they would go on for 40 minutes and he goes, you know what? I mean, there was literally one guest that he kicked off. He was pissed. He's like, dude, you're just, this is total BS. And I can't remember the guest, but it happened every now and then. But when he got somebody like Harlot the Witch on, and I'm sorry you missed that episode, Dave, but Harlot the Witch was a woman who gave herself up to Satan. She wholeheartedly gave herself up to the devil, she said. And she went into detail on some very disturbing things that she had done in her life, and she said it was all for the good of Satan, is what she said. And then they got into this kind of discussion about her child, and this is where it got really disturbing, and I almost don't even like to talk about it, but it's one of the shows that stood out in many Art Bell fans' mind because it was just so disturbing. But Art Bell asked her, he said, what about your child? What's going to happen to your child? Because they were getting real deep on her giving her soul to the devil, and any child she bore um, also would go to the devil, to Satan.
Mhm.
And he's like, well, how is that possible? How is that possible? And again, without getting into details and stuff like that, she said there are ways, there are rituals, there are things you can do to be sure that this can happen. But Dave, she was the most evil guest or even caller that I ever heard on the Art Bell show.
Wow.
Um, so I definitely need to get that episode over to you because you need to listen to it
I,
or look
I
it up.
actually just looked it up on on
Okay.
Google and copied it. So I'll look
Okay.
forward to that, and it'll go well with our Exorcist caption this from yesterday.
Right, there you go. But yeah, Art Bell died in 2018. So man, it wasn't even that long ago. Okay, so I know he had the cell phones going and stuff, but I do believe he still may have had a fax machine in the back of him, to tell you the truth. But he was too old school. But yeah, Harlot the Witch was something else, and very, very disturbing. It's an episode that if you want to listen to something very, very dark, that's not dealing with like the Ghost Investigator Society, the EVPs, which scared the living daylights out of me. Listen to that show. That's very interesting. Another one, and then I'll let you go with some of the guests you want to talk about. But we should probably talk about Whitley Strieber. He's
Okay.
kind of a big, big name when it comes to Art Bell. I mean, they became friends.
Yeah,
Heck,
I thought they were definitely like kind of business partners in a way,
yeah,
in their writing and publishing. Especially Whitley Strieber wrote so many books.
yeah. Which most of his books had to do. Listen, he was the author of Wolfen, which ended up in becoming a movie,
Mhm.
which is a great movie, werewolf movie. But then this incident happened, and some people say, listen, him being an author didn't take off. He kind of wanted to go and do something different. So there's kind of two sides to the whole Whitley Strieber story. To this day, I mean, he's gone his whole life talking about his encounters. So, but there was book after book after book, starting with Communion, where he was abducted, and he became a guest on Art Bell's show and talked about his incident. And everybody knows the movie, I would think, Communion. It's your typical abduction story. I don't know if you want to add anything basic in there about Whitley Strieber.
I will. One of my friends actually bought his house in Texas. And for a year after they bought the house, they had people still showing up trying to meet Whitley Strieber.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And he
Yeah.
was nice enough to sign some books for my friend when at closing. And, that's, sounds like a pretty cool guy.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
do you know I missed a good caption this? I captioned late at night and no one saw, but
Right, right.
I had some really good ones as well to add.
Put it in the caption below. Listen, it was a fun night yesterday for caption this with The Exorcist. But yeah, Whitley Strieber, he was abducted and taken aboard a ship, and you can get into the details. If you watch the movie, he's in some kind of cocoon-like thing. But your typical, prodding and probing and all this other stuff that uh, started him off on his journey with the aliens and the abduction stories. And he had many, many stories to tell. Constantly, each new book that came out talked about new things that would pop into his head, because it slowly came out over the years, things that happened during his abductions over the decades, and just was a very interesting guest, a very interesting person. I missed interviewing him by this much. He said,
Oh no.
yeah, he said yes, and then something came up and I couldn't interview. But anyways, it's all good. But yeah, Whitley Strieber, he's an interesting character. I loved he ended up taking over Dreamland, which he does to this day, which was a Sunday show for Art Bell, which would dive into the Dreamlands type stuff, topics. Although it kind of did the same kind of stuff he did Monday through Friday. But anyways, yeah, so that's Whitley Strieber.
On a scale from 1 to 10, what do you think believability is for him?
Dave, here's my thing. Okay, let's get into it. I love Harpel. I listen, even Whitley Strieber. the guy made a great guest until he started getting towards the end, up by the 2005.
Yeah.
Him and Art started to talk about Earth changes and the planet being overrun. I mean, their book became, a bestseller, of course, and ended up becoming a movie. Do you remember the name of the movie, Dave? The
It's
Day
it's
After?
right
The Day
here,
After?
but no, I think the day after was a nuclear holocaust movie.
Okay, could be. It could be. The movie basically was
Someone in the chat, I'm sure Connie will know.
yeah, or CM. Come on, Dino. You should still go for doing a podcast like Art Bell. Well, listen, I do my paranormal shows. I know I should dive a little bit deeper and get it a little bit more streamlined. Hopefully that'll come up in the. We're working on things, but Whitley Strieber. Listen, he had his shows also where he talked about the implant. He has an implant in his ear,
Yeah,
and he tried to get it removed. When they tried to remove it, it would get hot. It would move around.
it would move away. Oh,
Yes, yes.
yes.
That
And
air that gets to you, right, Dave?
it,
Yeah.
it does. Well, it reminds me of Star Trek too, The Wrath of Khan. But
Oh yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but to have something like that has like an intelligence, to know when it's being threatened in a way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And Bubba had the title of the film, Day After Tomorrow.
Day After Tomorrow, Bubba. Thank you. Yeah. When he started to get into that kind of topic, I started to lose interest with that. Like I almost wouldn't even listen in on those anymore because Art did quite a few shows, and we're going to touch on another guest in a little bit that kind of talked about Earth changes, but we won't talk about that yet. Gordon Michael Scallion, I'll get to that. I think a charlatan, but anyways, with Whitley Strieber, when they really start, listen, I understand trying to let people know in the world that what you're doing is bad, throwing away and not recycling and the stuff that goes into our oceans and our waters. I get all of that. But when it becomes a topic on a show like Art Bell's, where he started off really wanting to know about the paranormal, the other, everything. What happens when you die? That was a big thing with Art Bell. And then the UFOs. He has his encounter. All of that kind of really deep, rounded out kind of paranormal stuff that we love, right, Dave?
Absolutely.
And then he goes into the whole Earth changes and you better prep and you better do this. Then I start to lose it. I'm like going, oh, come on. The Earth's big enough. It's the whole Gaia thing. It'll take care of itself. I mean, listen, I don't want people doing things they shouldn't be doing, of course. And we should keep the planet clean. I'm all for that. But these guests, some of them just went a little bit too far. And when Whitley started getting into that stuff, I'm like going, oh, I'm not liking it. I'm not liking it. So that's my thing. If he's telling the truth on I think is what you're asking on the whole alien abduction thing.
Right.
I mean, I have to say 50-50 on it. I mean, of course, being skeptical and just not knowing for sure, you're just taking one guy's story, right?
True. But I mean, that's all we have as well. I mean, it's the same thing with Travis Walton,
But he could back it up with, of course, the lie detectors, the other witnesses and stuff. Whitley Strieber only really had his wife that would kind of be there to kind of say, yeah, the night was kind of weird, but it was really, am I wrong, Dave? It really was Whitley Strieber's story to be
Yes.
told.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm probably a little bit more confident in his story, maybe 70%.
Okay.
But like you, as the show progressed, it was kind of like, it definitely fell off with the topics he was covering and such.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got strong words from CM. I do not believe
Yeah.
anything Whitley Strieber ever said. Nothing. Well, and you know what? That's where it's tough. And even Art Bell said, when you got nothing to sell, when you got no agenda, it makes it easier to believe to a point. but he made his living off of those books and those stories. So
Mhm.
there's a side of me that wonders. And again, if there were other witnesses and things that can corroborate what was going on, and there really wasn't any, but he did seem like a very confident guy. When he would talk about the stories, it would hit you. You're like, oh my, okay, you could feel it, the emotion in his voice. So, but again, people can be very good actors, so it is this little kind of 50-50 thing to me. So, and we all got our own beliefs on these things.
Yeah.
So,
And speaking about acting, um,
okay.
you were on Art
Yeah.
Bell,
Yeah.
as I was as well.
Yes.
And I want to know how much pre-planning you did for your episode. I mean,
Okay.
for those of you who don't know, Dino um, got bit by a vampire, and he was walking, and it came from him from above, and it was such a great episode,
Thank you.
great call,
Yeah.
and I think it's so cool that I was listening to it, not even knowing who Dino was, and then like years later being here,
Yeah.
but you know, like on my call, there was no screener.
Yeah.
You just picked up, you were on hold, you listened to the show, and then it's all, we got Dino east of the Rockies who's suffering from a vampire bite, or,
I'm
I
losing my
was
mind.
losing my mind. That was it.
Yeah. And it's on YouTube. Anybody can go listen. It's the vampire, big old vampire, Art Bell, vampire, and it'll pop right up. It's a guy sitting there with blood coming out of his. But no, Dave, honestly, there was no pre-planning, no nothing. I got on there, I started to roll with it, and then I kind of got into it because everybody thinks it's the same guy from the Area 51 frantic caller line,
Right.
because I kind of have that in my voice where it's shaking a little bit. But honestly, the story just started to roll out in front of my brain, and it was all fresh, coming right out. And at the end, Art just said, "Yeah, wow, okay, this guy's a little." I forget what he said, but it just, I think it did actually, pat myself on the back. I think was a good spot for the show. I think a
It,
memorable one.
it really was. And I think you even got a plug at the end for, I don't know if it was your podcast or for Bell Gab or
Yes,
something
yes,
like
yes.
that. You were shouting out to those people.
Yes, I think at the very end, you are correct. At the very end, I think I said something about either Paranormal in the Night. I think I said that, or something along those lines. I don't know if it was Bell Gab. It could have been, but yeah, interesting. I went through all of that, then I plugged something at the end, and that's, I think, when Art said, "Oh, okay, this guy's full of crap." How's the vampire thing going? Pretty good, Sears. As you can see, I never age, and it's doing well. So there you go. But anyways, I think that kind of rounds out Whitley Strieber and our thoughts on him. He's still doing Dreamland. You could find him online. So yeah.
And one thing that I wanted to bring up, I don't think we have yet, is Skinwalker Ranch.
Did we not talk about Bob Bigelow and Nids?
I don't think so.
No, well, listen, we could touch on it again, but yeah, I mean, Skinwalker Ranch is kind of a big thing right now because of the show that's
Right.
on. I think the Travel Channel, is that what's on? One of those.
Well, I know it's on. Maybe not. You know what? I saw it on Amazon Prime. Is where I saw it.
That's where I've seen it too.
Okay.
A lot of the channels like Travel Channel and all that, they kind of throw some of those series up and over there, but who knows? That's where I watch it too myself. But yes, it's in the news. It's, I think, going on its either 4th or 5th season, and lots of interesting stuff there. But yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Well, Skinwalker Ranch. I was first introduced to it through.
I thought we talked about it, but we're going to talk about it again. It was very interesting. So
all right,
go ahead.
With George Knapp.
Yeah.
And Art Bell talked about it, and I was just wondering, again, your thoughts, how truthful you thought it was. Weird things have happened.
Yeah.
Bob Bigelow did own it, multi-millionaire out of Las Vegas.
Billionaire.
Yes.
I do believe.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I believe he sold it. And that's where the series began as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
think what makes it. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, it's okay. I was just the one interesting thing I remember with this happening was like some wild wolf or dog or something like that they shot. It didn't die. There was a piece of fur that they analyzed, and it was like super old or something like that. And
Yeah.
it was just kind of, I'm not sure if I'm so much into that, but it was just one of the things I remember from the Art Bell show.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about it. I knew we did, but I listen. Recapping it really quick again. Yeah, I mean, Bob Bigelow, a billionaire, bought the land because of centuries going back to Native American folklore. Stuff has been happening on this land forever. Okay, so a billionaire who's into space to this day, commercial space enterprises, and all of that kind of stuff. Aeronautics and all that. So he wants answers. He's a billionaire who wants answers. So there's something to it. He even gets together a team called NIDS, National Institute of Discovery Science, and puts together a team to investigate all of these happenings. And from what I remember, there's a lot of information that he never let out, which is the one thing that pisses me off.
Right.
Again,
That always pisses you off.
Listen, Dave,
Bigfoot. It pisses you off on Mel's, not Mel's hole, but Art's parts. It pisses you off on the Ouija board incident. We have a whole list of things.
Because we don't have a conclusion. If you're going to come out to the public, like Bob Bigelow did on Skinwalker Ranch, if you're going to come out and say, we're gathering information, we're going to release it to the public once we investigate it, and then you find out that a lot of this stuff isn't released. You have the incident of footage being, there being footage of infrared, a being crawling out of a circular porthole and walking into the woods. How do you not release this to the public, Dave? Right?
I would have.
Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to prove something and say, listen, I don't know what it is, but something exists, unless somebody got to him, which again, I think a lot of that is a bunch of BS. To a point. I know the government will come down if they're hiding and they got an agenda so that certain stuff don't come out. But the past 2 months since the beginning of the year, Dave, what have we had? One after the other after the other. 1 month we had, within a few days, a week, like 5 UFOs shot down. I just can't fathom what Art Bell would have done and who he would have had on to talk about that, right?
Right.
Then with this whistleblower, and which I got my, going on.
I'll tell you who he would have had on. He would have had on Stan Deo. He would have had on Bob Lazar. He would have had on Whitley
the regulars. Yeah, the regulars. But yeah, no. Again, I can always talk Skinwalker Ranch because there's something there. I know that. It's just why
I haven't seen the show yet. So
you've
that's
got
something I'm looking forward to. It's on my to be watch list.
Yes, you will binge that. Don't be freaked out that first season and go, oh, this is a bunch of BS, because you'll look at it and you will go, what the hell? Because I forget the lead guy there who is doing the investigating. He's an actual higher up with clearance, and he's a guy. He knows what he's talking about. But he seemed so fake to me. Mm-hmm. But in recent weeks, he's come out to inform people that he had a lot to do with the government and aerial phenomenon and stuff like that. But he still seemed maybe because he was not a professional, when it comes to being in front of the camera, he came across that way. But yes, you're in for a treat with that show because a lot is going on. Some similar things to what Bob Bigelow talked about. But again, the skeptical side of me continuously says, again, well, why wasn't a lot of this information released? You know,
Uh,
so yeah, that's my kind of thing on Skinwalker Ranch. I think, you know, that's a big part of the Art Bell lore too, because even Linda Moulton Howe had come on many times and talked about that because, you know, the cattle mutilation thing was a
uh,
big thing there. I mean,
all the time, every time she was on, and she was usually on Dreamland,
yeah,
she talked about the cattle mutilations,
yes,
you know, and how you would have cattle cut open, all their organs are gone, all their blood is gone. The cut is surgical rather than a claw, things
yeah,
like that. And, you know, and then she would talk about to farmers who saw their cattle go up and, you know,
in the light,
into
yeah.
light. Yeah. And
She even had a stretch, if you remember, there was like a week-long stretch where Linda was coming on because in some inner cities there were mutilations of cats the,
right, I
the,
remember that. Yeah.
the same way with surgical precision and no blood, being drained of blood, having certain areas of the body cored out like laser like or whatever, and you know, something they say could not be done by anybody just coming up there and just cutting up a cat, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a big stretch where for some reason cats were being found in the inner city, and it just makes you go, what is this all about? I just, you know, that's a strange one. That's one that I just, you know, sit there and shake my head at. You know, it's a tough one.
Yeah. And one day I do hope to meet her, as not occasionally, but every year in springs we have Contact in the Desert. And that's where you have Graham Hancock coming out here, Linda Moulton Howe. They have
Yes.
basically 3 days in Palm Springs where they talk about paranormal stuff. And I've always wanted to go, but it's always been too close to the end of the semester. But one year, maybe next year I'll go.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. Yeah, yeah. Linda Moulton Howe was she was something else. She has a YouTube channel and she still does her Earth Files reports.
Right.
So you know, if you're a fan and you still, you know, want to keep in touch with what's going on with her, and listen, stuff's still going on and she's right on top of it. There was a episode, if you don't, I don't know if you remember, but 1,700 cattle went missing in an area, just disappeared. They just disappeared. 1,700 unaccounted for. They said she went, it was a whole couple hours she was going on about it and talking. No trucks could come in and out. They would have known, you know, there's no way in this vast area that they could have gotten 1,700 head of cattle. And they did, and it just disappeared. So I don't know. I mean, you would think they would have been, I don't know if she mentioned that. They would have been tagged, you think, but just a very interesting thing. Hey, Kim drew the line. What's going on? Good to see you here. And Blade, what's going on? Welcome
And
to Remembering Art Bell.
also, one of the things I remember particularly from Linda Moulton Howe is how she lived in like Huntingdon, Pennsylvania, and she's all, it's DON, not TON, you know.
Yes.
And she always would make that statement.
And going back old school, talking about that, she would always give her mailing address.
Yeah.
And how would we reach you? How would we let you know our story? You know, they would have to write out or print up on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, stamp it up, and send it off to Linda. And she would eventually get it. Same with Art Bell, right? I mean, you
Well,
know,
that was the great thing, was anytime that he would give out a website,
yeah.
it would crash. You know, back in the day when websites would crash because
Right.
they had more than 5 people on them.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was like one of the things that would happen with every single guest. And occasionally he would, he would, you know, someone would want to give out their phone number and Art Bell would be all, no, you actually don't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. He likes listen, you're gonna, and they would do that, and you start hearing ringing in the background.
Yeah.
He's like, I told you that's going to be annoying. Go unplug it, take it off the hook, something.
And there
But
was
yeah.
one episode I was listening to the other night, and I think it may have been with NIDS, where they're all like, yeah, no one's manning the phones tonight. We'll be here on Monday. And then people were calling in the background. It was great.
Yes, you can even hear it there. Yeah, yeah. I don't want to monopolize, Dave. I promise. Next one is yours.
Okay.
But there's another one I definitely want to get into because
Yeah.
when it comes to the UFO field, this is a story that I think definitely is undeniable because there was way too many witnesses. There were police involved, and it took place over hours and hours and hours. They seen it over treetops. It's the Ohio Dispatch, the Trumbull County UFO sightings. Do you remember that?
No. I
Oh,
thought you were headed toward the Phoenix Lights.
well, I mean that's a biggie too, but that has a you can say a kind of skeptical even though lots of sightings anyways a whole different topic. Michael C, good to see you. I miss listening to Art give his intro. Yepper, Michael C, definitely all miss Art Bell. Trying my best to keep it alive here, that's for sure. But the Trumbull County UFO sightings, you can look it up online. Their actual 911 dispatch calls that were coming in, and the police officers were dispatched to many locations around the area in Ohio, Trumbull County, Ohio, naming the streets and saying, "Yeah, I'm seeing the light right above the trees," because citizen had called in and said, "Listen, something big and bright just went over my house above the tree lines. It was very weird." And I forget who the person was who got a hold of all these 911 tapes, but they're all police officers calling into the dispatch, and the recordings, thank God they saved. Um, it's the dispatcher talking to the police officers and personally saying, "Yeah, John, I just walked outside the building and I'm seeing it right here. It's off in the distance. If you can go over there." And he would go to the street. He says, "Yes, it's hovering right above right now." It just was such an episode, and it was undeniable. It's like when so many police officers are running around this small city here and seeing all the same thing, watching it move about. And the dispatcher came out and even took a ride in the car with the police officer to follow it around at the end. It's just like so good, Dave, so good.
Well, it looks like there's even a podcast on the Trumbull County UFO mystery.
Oh, okay.
Officers from 5 different law enforcement agencies witnessed a UFO in 1994 that they couldn't explain. Local Air Force Reserve base denied any involvement.
Yes, because the dispatcher actually called up the airport, and I forget if she called up the military site too, but she called them up and said, "Is there anything on your guys' radar? Because we all see it right here floating." You know what I mean? And they said, "No, there's nothing coming up on the radar. We don't see anything." And she kept, and she was explaining to him, and he's where it would be, because this is live, live. You know what I mean? And it just was so interesting. But yes, it's a very, very popular. And listen, Sears James. Oh my God! Thank you for putting us in that category, right, Dave?
Yes, thank you, Sears James. And don't drink and drive tonight, all right, buddy?
Yeah. Dino and Dave, Martin and Lewis Avenue to name only a few. Oh boy. Listen, I love doing these shows with Dave.
Absolutely.
We love this stuff, man. We have passion. So listen, it's off to you, Dave. Pick a person and let's fly with it. Let's go.
Oh man, I've got like 2 or 3 pages of people we haven't covered yet.
Scratch them off as we're going, but yeah.
Oh man, I want to talk about Egypt.
Okay.
I want to talk about John Anthony West and Zawi Hawass and Robert Schock as well.
Okay.
Egypt was one of my favorite topics. It's one of my favorite topics as a teacher to cover as well. because I do teach a class on ancient civilizations. For those of you who don't know, I teach art history, and I have a chapter on Egypt. And, there is the information from the text, but then I always love supplementing other people's ideas and not saying it's built by aliens or anything like that. But I definitely think a lot of what we see from the history books is wrong, it's incorrect, and it's something that also takes a long time to change. When we found the cave paintings in Chauvet, we found those in 1994.
Right.
It was 6 years before they even hit any of the book changes. And the idea is that we love to have this narrative. And when something goes against the narrative, it's very difficult to digest and to change and to, bring up new slides and stuff. And so with Egypt, I'd love to offer what the book has to say, but I also love the idea that these monuments are built by more advanced people than we have today. I'm not saying it's aliens. I don't think it's aliens, but I think
could be aliens, could be an ancient civilization that knew things we didn't know. So
when you think about Atlantis, for instance, and you have this advanced civilization, why couldn't we have built those pyramids ourselves? And it's the same thing with, as we briefly talked about, I think in our second show, with Coral Castle. And the idea of how sound is so important in terms of moving blocks and material. Art went to Egypt a couple of times, went to the Great Pyramids, met and hung out with Zawi Hawass, who was the Minister of Antiquities at the time.
What a character.
I'm not sure what his involvement is today. It's funny because when you get Graham Hancock into the picture, he and Zawi Hawass totally clash, and they won't even debate one another. It's just I believe this narrative, and Graham Hancock, as all know, it's this narrative. I always enjoyed the fact that they talked about the Great Sphinx in front of the pyramids being recarved. I don't know if you ever saw the show with Charlton Heston about the Great Sphinx from Egypt.
Don't think so.
Okay, you must see it, and I'll send you a link later.
Okay.
But it is kind of Charlton Heston, talking about how this sculpture is really about 12,000 years old instead of 4,000 or 5,000, which is what's in the history books. This is also where Edgar Cayce comes in and says there's a chamber underneath one of the paws of the Sphinx. And so it's just, to me, a really fascinating topic that a lot of my students are very much into. It's also a time period where you have these composite creatures, where you have half animal, half human. I just think it's really cool. So.
Oh yeah, no. Listen, Zahi Hawass was a character. He was he was Scarface of antiquities over there in Egypt, and he would come across as, listen, I will tell you where you can go, but if there's something we want to hide, we will hide it from you. He was one of those guys that he was so charismatic, and he took a liking to Art Bell. So. But listen, was Art Bell really going to see the things they didn't want him to see? No, probably not. But he did take them to places, and he had them lay in the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid, which Art Bell said was very weird because there were these kind of frequency sounds. It just felt very, very odd. But does the Great Pyramids still exist in the form that they do because of the location that they're in? You know what I mean? Are we yet? Because we know that there are pyramid-like structures all over the world.
Right.
Some covered in the jungle, some buried beneath the dirt because of geography and topography, all that good stuff. So there could be other pyramids the same as the Egyptian pyramids, but I mean, we know Machu Picchu and all these other things, and the ones in Peru and stuff like that. Even the Mayan civilization have somewhat, but they're kind of different. But yeah, no, it's interesting. And even the Great Pyramids themselves, it's like when you start traveling inside the Great Pyramid with very few chambers, and then there's that, what do they call it? That chute that goes up and it aims right to a part of the sky. I forget. It's
Yeah,
very
it's called a shoot, and it,
right, right,
it is.
right.
It's you have these basically tunnels
Yeah,
that they talk about it being like it's for the workers to leave or whatever, but it's positioned towards specific stars.
yeah,
And you're right. It's so interesting that, you have the king's chamber, you have the queen's chamber, and they're made out of a different substance. They're made out of granite,
yeah,
which they also had to bring from hundreds of miles away.
right.
These 600-ton slabs of granite,
Yeah,
while the rest of the pyramid is limestone. And to me, what would have been really neat is to have seen the pyramids during their heyday of 2500 BC,
oh yeah,
where you have visitors, and I think the visitors were from Greece, that they came back to Greece and wrote about how the pyramids on the outer casing had hieroglyphs over the entire surface.
wow, yeah,
I mean,
no,
today we're just so used to them being steps
yeah, yeah.
with these giant multi-ton blocks, but they had a smooth casing that was inscribed with hieroglyphs, and I
No,
think
that,
that's just so cool.
yeah, no, it's very cool. Of course, we would all love to see it when it was just made, you know. But yeah, no, there were a lot of weird things. There's even the gold cap. There's supposedly a gold, what I forget what Zahi Hawass called it, but a cap that would go at the top of the pyramid that was made out of all gold. And it was said that once put on, that's when whatever the pyramid was used for, so people say, it would start up, or whatever you want to say, the
Yeah, like
energy.
the conductive element.
Yeah, because there's this whole underground thing going on too that we don't even really know a whole lot about, right, Dave? I mean,
Right. There's a huge underground, like a lot of people think the Giza complex is just the three pyramids and that's it. It's
no,
a vast complex.
yeah,
And underneath the pyramids, there are these basically, I want to say they're as deep as 80 feet, these
mm,
tunnels and passageways where we also think that water transferred as well.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, no. Thank you, John David. And yes, happy Father's Day to all out there who are fathers. And getting back to you, he had a guest on too that talked about, speaking of blocks and how you move them, because we're still in a debate kind of, over how these things could have possibly been moved, right? And you talk about the granite, and people talk about they were moved down the Nile. Then once they got here, man had a way of moving them and pushing them up, or through water at the time. But there's still, he had a guest on who could levitate objects through vibration from sound. You remember that guest?
I do. I don't
Yeah.
remember the name.
Yeah, not a big, I think it was just a one. He had him on, never really had him on again or talked about him, but he had video that showed that it was, so vibration and sound can move or levitate an object.
Yeah.
I think we know that much when it comes to science. But if that's enough to move something the size of the blocks in the Great Pyramid, even if it's on water, who knows? I mean, water is also a great conductor of with sound and vibrations. That's why whales or dolphins, they use that kind of sonar, whatever. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not smart when it comes to that, Dave. You know what I mean? But you're the professor. I don't know. Let's talk to us about it. Just joking. Anyways.
Well, I will also mention, I think it is fascinating that these older civilizations, those that built Stonehenge, those that built the pyramids, the guy who built the Crystal Castle, you know, why are you building with such difficult building materials?
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, I mean, could you like not cut up the block into smaller pieces and transfer it that way? And so that's why I do think it is kind of more of a sound resonance or something like that that is allowing these people to move these gigantic blocks.
Yeah, because again, like you said, there's a place in Florida called the Coral Castle where this guy claims it was one guy over many, many years, pretty much his lifetime, that built this castle and very large objects. And he said through levers and this and that and sound and vibration. So he was kind of vague in it, which kind of pisses me off too, Dave. Finally, we got some guy that's doing something similar, but on a smaller scale, but isn't going to
Still
let
won't
us
tell
know.
us.
Yes, he wants to leave behind a mystery, and it's come on, man. Hey, Overkill and Bob Gable. He says we do know it's BS. Love the idea, but let's be realistic. Okay, Bob, you explain to me, please. Type it out as much as you can in short form, and tell me how it was done. Because listen, yeah, uh, there there's a controversy for a reason, and it comes down to how closely packed these stones are. It's way more than just let's move giant blocks. There's the astronomy thing. There's the way it is built, the chambers, there's so many things. So, and I still really, I'm not sold on we can reproduce this. Listen, Bob, I've seen the same videos you've seen, and no, not the way that the Great Pyramid was made. Do you know what he's talking about, Dave? Have you seen those videos?
I have, and I
Okay,
have watched them,
thoughts on
but
those?
I don't think we can. When you have these big construction companies saying it's not a question of the money, it's not a question of it's we just don't know how to do this. And then for someone to, you
Yeah,
know, again, these blocks are placed where you can't slide a piece of paper through them. They're cut
yeah,
at 90-degree angles and just everything is done so perfectly. And
yeah,
I just don't, you know,
yeah. And if anything, Bob, if anything, again, like me and Dave said a little bit earlier, if I'm not saying it's from aliens, it could be a past existence of ours, our us as a human species. You know what I mean? An ancient civilization that possibly did this with technology that somehow got lost. You know, we've talked about Atlantis over and over and over. You know, was there really a place? You know, sounds like this was an actual place. We just don't know where it was, right, Dave?
right.
So that could be, you know, how things were done. We just don't know how to do it now. I mean, you are saying I work in construction. Listen, okay, I'm not going to be rude or mean. I like you, Bob Gable, but okay, I'll leave it at that. You work in construction, but I'll just say this: that doesn't mean much to me. It doesn't explain making a great pyramid. So, anyways, let's move on from that. Let's move on from that. You respect everybody's ideas on things, and I respect your idea, Bob Gable.
And
We
that's,
can do it with cranes and all that stuff now, so I believe you.
you know,
Anyways,
that's the one thing I do hope when we do die, we learn all the secrets.
no, right? Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's just like, look, and that's one of the cool things that, you know, we talked a little bit about time travel last time we were together.
yeah.
And it's, that's what I would do is I would go back and I would see, I want to know how the pyramids are made. I want to know if there was an Atlantis. I want to see, you know, all these really cool things throughout history. You know, I
Oh
don't need to necessarily go to the future, but I want to go and see the past.
Oh gosh, you know that would be a dream. I just don't believe that they used sound to move any. Oh, and listen, Bob, I'm not saying they used sound either. It's just we're throwing out hypothesis. You know what I mean? What do we think? There are a ton of theories out there, right? I had one that said they used some kind of water pump to. Anyways, there's many theories. I like what J.O.B. has said in the chat. The Coral Castle and the pyramids. Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." So, I mean, take that as you may. It's also something to consider. But listen, to me, I don't think we really know a lot about that ancient archaeology, not just the Great Pyramids, but even some of the other ancient structures in like Iran or some of these other places in the Middle East that we just can't explain too. That were also, you can't, so smooth, you can't, and so close together, you can't. It's just amazing. I think we should move on, Dave.
Okay, I will say
Unless
that
you got something to say.
one of the difficult things
Yeah.
about that area of the world is, all the warfare that takes place, that we
Right.
can't really go in with archaeologists to those areas and do the proper excavation, and
Yeah.
who knows what's there. I mean, there are stories that, I hear all the time about, like, these areas of the world where you go into a person's house and they don't have a floor, and they do excavation under their house and they bring up all these gold artifacts and they sell them, and they don't have to work for 6 months because they find, a gold ingot from the Roman Empire. There's still a lot of things to be discovered.
Oh, 100%. J.O.B. says, what I find impressive is the pyramid's construction is tied to the stars, matching Orion's belt. Yeah. And listen, humans can do that. Astronomy, I'm not saying that, we didn't know enough about astronomy back in the day, that we couldn't build something and incorporate astronomy. But when you get down to, in mathematics, the very tiniest of marks, it makes it hard to believe some of these things, and it just gives you more questions than answers, right? But I do believe there were civilizations that were more advanced than we think. Oh yeah, definitely. I believe that 100%. Like Michio Kaku said, there's what is that? Oh, what is that, Dave? Number 1, 2,
What,
3.
class
The
one
stages.
civilization?
Class 1 civilization. Yeah, we haven't even reached that.
Right.
Yeah. So there's that. But yeah, anything else? I do agree with you, Dave, that we've got a lot to discover because a lot has been buried, right? If you go to an abandoned hospital or abandoned house that is made of the top of the line material, you see how quickly everything starts to go away, crumble, decompose. It's just things disappear, so you got to start looking in the ground in dry areas or what. I don't know. It's lots to find yet. But anyways, any last thoughts on all of that stuff, since you're you kind of teach this stuff?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay.
Who do you want to talk about next?
How about the alien autopsy
Like the
video?
alien in the freezer?
Oh, well, we know that's fake.
Okay. Do we?
We can talk about it though. Do you want to talk about that or alien top?
No,
talk
alien autopsy. Let's do that.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. Richard Reed of it. Okay, no, I'm not going to go in there. Okay, alien autopsy. Okay. Let's talk about this a little bit because it's been featured on so many shows. And listen, you watch the video, it looks creepy. Okay. There are things in the picture, like the phone and certain instruments and the way they did things. But in my opinion, it looks just a little too staged. It looked a little, I don't know. Dave, let me push this to you. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to mention, to me, it looked like Hollywood.
Okay.
It did not look real at all. And my feeling as well is, I'm a big Bob Lazar fan. And he said while he was working at Area 51 and S4 that he would hear people talking about the kids. And by that, he meant that, these were the aliens. And the alien spacecraft he was in, the UFO, was built for someone that was much smaller than we are today.
Yeah.
And that there were like 3 seats. And even when we looked at Roswell, all the figures there were smaller. So
yeah, like 4 feet tall. It's yeah, and the alien autopsy video, and you can find it anywhere. I think it's still out there, but there was a controversy with who had the film, so they can check the film stock and the Kodak marks or whatever they have on there at the you can prove how old film is, but does that mean old film can't be used recently? You know what I mean? So there's that whole controversy, but the alien definitely was bigger. And yes, in a lot of the stories you say, or they say that, they're smaller, but there are taller aliens too that are some. But my point being, there was also a guest who came on and talked about that and said that the smaller green beings that, like Roswell, were beings that could withstand space, and they were more robotic, and they were like half and half. If you remember the guest that talked about that, I'm trying to go back in my mind. I do got issues, you guys. I can't think very well. You know what I'm talking about, though, Dave? Yeah,
I do.
Okay.
And even I was going to say Joe Rogan talked about this as well on one of his episodes, where it's kind of like, the mind really becomes the superior element, where we don't need like sexual organs or anything like that. It's all about the mind power. I the jury is still out for me as far as aliens go and what they look like. And, you always hear about the almond shaped eyes and, the dark eyes and things like that. And the grayness of it's just, I'm not 100% sold yet.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that, though, is it's always, it correlates with the alien abduction experience and who they see. This is how the beings are shown to them: the almond-shaped eyes, the big head, the very skinny arms and legs, and so if anything, I think it kind of lends a little bit of credence to those stories. You know what I mean? A little bit. Even though, listen, it's all. Again, I need to see an alien in front of me in order to believe it. But yeah, alien autopsy, to round that out, I think probably a little bit too Hollywood and probably, fake. There you go.
And I think someone had also mentioned it was similar to Bigfoot.
Oh, you know what? No.
But I'm like, I think you and I are both like, kind of Bigfoot does exist,
Yeah.
Compared to aliens. I'm more on line with Bigfoot. With the aliens, maybe at the Roswell crash, there were small figures. They had talked about even that they had put people from the Nazis had put people from concentration camps into these metallic aircraft and sent them over just to freak people out. I've heard that story. It's just, it's weird, but I'm more of like, the alien in the freezer, and it's just bunkus.
Yeah. The whole, that whole Richard. Yeah, didn't we talk about that, or did we not? I'm not.
We did briefly. Yeah, we made fun of it.
Okay. J.O.B. This sticks with me a little bit, just because I think it's on a whole different level. The alien autopsy, you look at it and you go, Hollywood. This is, somebody did this. The Bigfoot video, which is kind of stood the test of time, really, with theory after theory after theory, analysis. And You know, they've gotten down to the actual muscle tendons moving. You could see it in the video. All that BS you heard about, you know, the guy worked on Planet of the Apes. They were trying to get publicity and stuff. You find out that that's all a bunch of BS too. And that guy was kind of using it to push his career a bit, since it kind of got linked to him. But you look at the video for what it is, and you look at that Bigfoot looking over his shoulder. Am I wrong, Dave? I mean, you've seen the same things I think I have.
That is one of my favorite videos of my
Yeah.
whole life. You know, I remember watching it on In Search Of. I remember watching it on several of the Rod Serling specials of,
Yes.
you know, of these types of topics.
Yeah.
You know, and especially moving back to Art Bell, when we talked about bugs and the fact that he, you know, shot 2 Bigfoot, and when he went up to them, it was like, holy crap, these are people,
Yeah.
or they're close enough to where, you know, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And again, something that we don't know the end to, because no one left any map to where they were buried. But
Right.
you know, kind of like, you know, as we were talking about Egypt, there's so much that we haven't uncovered. There's so much land that is, you know, undisturbed when we look at, you know, the northwestern United States, and as well as in your area, right? You've got
Oh,
a lot of
yep.
sightings, and, you know,
Ohio is a big spot. Well, you know what? Pacific Northwest, Ohio is kind of a big area too for that kind of, you know, a lot of Bigfoot sightings in Ohio. But, you know, it's everywhere though, Dave. I mean, there are, again, we've gone, listen, it doesn't even need to be said. There's Bigfoot sightings everywhere, every day across the globe. And even when you get physical evidence like the footprints, which is a big thing because of the, what is it called, ephemeral arches, or the prints. I mean, it's almost like a
yeah,
handprint, you know. So you got that, you know, which is like a fingerprint. So you're taking a fingerprint of the foot, a footprint, whatever. You know what I mean? You're taking a fingerprint of the
that'd be
foot.
like a toe print.
Yeah. You got what I mean. But it's so distinct. You know what I mean? Can you fake a fingerprint? Of course. But listen, there's that. There's the hair samples, which always come back a form of primate, unknown primate, human. There's always something to it. So there, I consider that physical evidence. That plain and simple. You know what I mean? But I think more so all the legitimate sightings that people report. Okay. Same with the UFOs. Every single day from all over the world, you will get very reputable people saying, "I seen this. I seen this." A group of people has seen it. You know what I mean? We were all sitting here and we saw it. So it's whereas you don't have real hard proof yet, you know, it's still going on. So take it what you may. I don't know. Let's see. Anything in the chat here? I know people were saying anything, but could be misinformation. Well, misinformation is something. Listen, we're played. What are you laughing at, Dave?
CM.
Oh,
Bigfoot doesn't believe in you, Dave and Dino. I hope that he does. I hope he gets to watch this podcast and know that, hey, you know, we're a big fan.
yeah, come on, man. CM, you hurt my feelings, but no, I believe aliens over Bigfoot. Well, Bob gave you. Just ask yourself this: how are there so many sightings every day across the globe? Firsthand accounts, the hair samples, the footprints. You know, it goes on and on and on and on. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about the fake video footage that people do. That could lead us to our next story if you want, Dave, the Billy Meyer case. I mean, there's another one, but it's, you got to push the disinformation away and look at the cold hard facts. And when you do that, you're going to go, well, yeah, there's something to this. You know, if your son said, I see a mouse in every room in the house, then you know you're infested with mice, right? I mean, even though you're not seeing them because they dart very quickly wherever they can, and you don't see them. You go, listen, will you quit playing games with me, son?
Yeah, kind of like gnomes.
A little bit like that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish I would see one again.
And I still want you to do a show of your grandparents' house or homes. I think
Yes.
that would be so fascinating.
Yeah. Maybe I'll. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I did definitely got to get to that. Looks like it was right out of the X-Files episode. Okay. I just don't want to miss nothing. I don't think I did. Dino and Dave, do you remember yeah, you know what? Art Bell, yes, he would do that a lot. And a lot of times there's a lot to Art Bell that makes me, he's an entertainer too. And he would say these things and I'm like going, oh God, Art, come on. You're just so translucent. I know what you're saying. Every little click in the line can't be the government, but maybe it was.
Although you had a problem with your program with John Lear.
John Lear. Yes, John Lear. John Lear came onto my episode, and you can hear it at the very beginning. Not the sound, but us talking about it at the very beginning. Man, I had to hop over and do it again because on Skype, I think because no, on the phone, I think I had to hop onto. I don't know, but yes, there were very weird sounds, and it was driving me nuts. It was like a frequency kind of sound, like. So listen, I understand there very well could be something to that. That's for sure. But we have actual footage from fighter jets of unknown objects. Yes, Bob Gable. Yes, yes, yes. Pilots see these things right outside their window. What's next to me? Radar, please tell us what this is. I mean, looks
I
like
remember Ronald Reagan said he saw a UFO out of his window when he was flying when he was governor of California.
Yep. It's again many.
Another guest you should have on Paranormal Into the Night is I forget her first name. It's one of the Eisenhower relatives. I want to say it's Sarah Eisenhower, but I think that's wrong.
Okay.
But she's a big UFO person. And I always thought it was interesting, too, with Eisenhower himself. That's the person who, allegedly has made, compacts with aliens back in the 1950s when he was president.
Yes. That's gone throughout history. Many higher ups have seen things. But before we leave the Bigfoot again, and we get to another subject, also Linda Moulton Howe, who came out with that Bigfoot scream that Art Bell would play all the time. What it is, I don't know, but it is certainly a loud howl that Linda, who has traveled the world in search of all of these things, has said she's come across another scream so similar from Bigfoot researchers that, there's no doubt. And of course it was analyzed and it's unknown. Because they can isolate sounds from different animals. They've done that. We've got that archived, at this point in our existence as human beings. So we can distinguish animals by the sound and frequency of the scream, the howler, the yell, the grunt, whatever. And they don't know. They just don't know. So very interesting on that aspect too. But anyways, Dave.
Lily of the Fox Valley just wrote Laura Eisenhower. And yes, that's the person.
Laura, okay.
Awesome. I've seen her speak. She's a fantastic speaker on the subject.
Thank you, Lily of the Fox Valley. Yeah, you've been here before. I've seen you before. WTF, what's going on, man? The scream is interesting. It is interesting. Again, not saying it's, the real deal, but, you never know. I don't know. Oh, my God, Dave, we're almost getting at the bottom of the hour. I know. What's good is I'm scratching off what we've talked about.
That's good.
Yeah.
And I was hoping one night we could do like an open line to where we could have the chat ask questions, and stuff. There was a question whether we believed about Art Bell's sighting, UFO sighting. And I do believe it.
Yes.
Basically, Art Bell was driving to his home in Pahrump. Ramona was with him,
Hey, Jojo.
and she noticed that there was this basically big black triangle blocking out the stars, and they stopped their car and got out, and it was like literally hovering 20 feet above them.
Yeah.
I do believe it.
Silent. Yes, he said silent. You can't. It's just. He said there was no denying it. No denying it.
Yeah.
Um,
And especially, one thing we don't talk about too much with Art is, he was in the Air Force, and his family was also in the Air Force because he was born in North Carolina in Camp Lejeune. So he's familiar with aircraft, and I do believe he did see something, and he took offense when I think someone said, "Oh, it was just an aircraft from a nearby base," and he's like, "There's nothing we have that does this."
Right, and you got to remember too, he lives right near, Area 51, right over the mountains, and Art Bell, and close to many military hotspots, in the area. So, he's seen the black helicopters. For him to actually, and you got to remember, he goes outside and he looks. He looks up to the skies. If you don't look up to the skies, you're never going to see a thing. Most of us go through our daily lives looking straight forward, and we don't see nothing but the person or thing in front of us. So what the heck are we missing by not looking up? Who knows? But
I mean, I know you're in Ohio, and I know you're in Cleveland, but for me being in LA, we have light pollution, so I mean, I'm lucky to see 5 stars, at night. And if you go out to the desert here, like Joshua Tree or someplace like that, and look up, I mean, it's almost scary.
Yeah.
With how many stars and how infinitesimal we are.
Oh, and listen, a lot of the groups that have started going out there with it's Sirs James. That's funny. I have some gardening questions for Dave, but that can wait for another time. We'll do a show, gardening with Dave. Dave will take your questions for gardening tips. There you go.
Dave, we can do a flora and aquatic show. So people with aquarium questions can ask you, and I can.
Yeah, I'm throwing it all over the place on this channel. It's just not all horror. But no, I believe Art Bell. I believe he did see something. It's a very interesting. I mean, and it kind of coincides with a lot of other people who have described things during that era, especially the same way. So just silently, very slowly going across the sky. But I do want to talk about the Billy Meyer case a little bit because I think he's a bunch of. I think that's a bunch of BS. What do you think, Dave? I mean, listen.
The first thing that comes to mind, and I don't want it to sound bad, is drunk hillbillies.
Yeah.
It sounded like a really good party. It's like, hey, we've got this really great story, let's tell people. I do not buy it myself.
Yeah, no, there's way too. It's a reason why I'm curious why the heck it's such a big deal for people in the paranormal field still to talk about Billy Meyer is kind of is still interesting for people, and you look at the photos, whatever, but then you dig into the story and you find out about this guy, a hippie commune. You understand that bringing in people, and then nobody's allowed to know anything about anything except Billy Meyer himself. Sounds more like a cult, right? So
I would be much more, why I don't believe Billy Meyer. I do believe the Barney abduction.
Betty Barney Hill.
And Barney abduction, yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, 100%. And we could talk about that real quick because I don't think there's anything much more to say about the Billy Meyer case because I think it's a bunch of hogwash, right? You know, I mean,
I agree.
yeah. John David, come on, man. Cleveland used to be polluted. It used to be. That's the key word. The mighty Cuyahoga River once caught fire. Yeah. Listen, we weren't the only area to have that happen. People were polluting left and right back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and it caused a lot of bad things. And it's why EPA became a big thing, and they control all of that stuff now. We've got a beautiful river system. Look at me, Dave. I'm getting all offensive. We got a beautiful lake, a beautiful river system, a park. So the Metro Parks is one of the best in the country, my good sir.
Well, I
Anyways,
also wanted, before it went away, J.O.B.
okay.
mentioned Jackie Gleason.
Yes.
And talking with Nixon. And that is, I think, something I would really like to know more about.
Yeah.
I do know that he had like one of the largest libraries of UFO books. And I would love to have known what he had and what he knew.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, listen, when you get somebody of that caliber, and listen, I believe Jackie Gleason. I just do. He had always. I know his career. I know his life. You know, he had no reason to come out and say anything. He was interested in it, like we are, Paranormal Field, and what's going on. And yeah, I do believe that story 100%. And moving on, I think, yeah, Betty and Barney Hill, Dave. He had many guests on. It's so funny. I've got a whole list of shows here in front of me. There's hundreds of shows and guests to talk about. We wait, what is it again? Yeah, there's tons of them. Anyways,
we'll get there. We'll get there. But I will tell you, as a fun fact, my sister and brother-in-law just went to the site, and there's a plaque that says, you know, this is the abduction site of Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just a really, you know, really cool place. So,
yeah. Well, you know, the thing with Betty and he had guests on, people to talk about Betty and Barney Hill. I mean, of course, that's a story that came up many times throughout Art Bell and Coast to Coast AM. And, you know, I mean, not only missing time, abduction, they remember, you know, being taken up to the craft. But, you know, Betty, she suffered from a form of skin cancer afterwards. I'm not sure if she died from it. I'd have to go back. But, you know, definitely hospitalized right after that from just radiation sickness, you know? So, I mean, you know, what do you take from that? The ship was hovering, the lights were there, you know, and their story is just stand the test of time is what it
and
has.
for them to wake up at their home and to have everything there but not in the correct place,
Right.
you know, that was always, I thought that was kind of a creepy part of the story. Like, you know, you and I, like, you know, your toys are displayed in a very specific way. And if there was one or two of them in a different area, you would know, but maybe no one else would.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, no, it's their story is unbelievable. It's well, I mean, you know what I'm saying. It's a very good one, and facts to back it up, you know. Thank you, Bob Gable, 199 super chat. How did you like Fire in the Sky? I loved it. The movie itself was pretty good, you know. The story behind it even more interesting. That's for sure, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Did you see the movie? I'm sure you did.
Parts of it.
Okay, yeah. Listen, it was not the best movie. I mean, you know, and then when you do know the story and you know that they changed certain things up, and even Travis Walton kind of was, you know, a little irked by it and said, you know, listen, I told them the story. They did what they wanted with the story, and it became a movie.
It's true. I mean, I always think back to Bob Lazar and all the movies they wanted to make from his experiences. And one of them had him like running on cars down Whittier Boulevard or Wilshire Boulevard in downtown LA. And he's all, none of that ever happened. He goes, you're either going to tell my story or, you know, just go make your own movie.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. John, well, J.O.B. Will Dino and Dave become the next Art Bell Coast to Coast YouTube style? Think about it. Listen, I would not listen. We were going to change up things every Sunday. I'll talk to Dave afterwards. I don't know how I'm going to go about this. I kind of told Dave, I just not feeling this Seinfeld thing. I don't know why, but when your gut kind of tells you, I'm just not feeling it. And I don't, as much as I love Seinfeld, you know what I'm talking about, Dave, right? It's just, if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it, but
It could have been the Miralax talking.
it could have been that too. But we'll talk about it. Listen, this is great. I mean, I think this is a hit. People love hearing these kind of topics, and me and Dave, I think we go back and forth really, really well with discussing all these things, which leads me to the other thing, man. And I think you understand what I'm talking here. The one UFO case, it's been hard for me to debunk, is the one where it landed behind a school in Africa, and dozens of students and teachers witnessed it. And they said exactly that was the aerial school landing. All those kids and 2 teachers saw it, said Bubba. Yeah, they all witnessed something, Dave, and this isn't at a school. I mean, that's another story that makes you go, what the heck did they see, if not for aliens or some kind of interdimensional being, right? I mean, am I wrong?
No, you're right. And I mean, I believe that a lot more than I believe Travis Walton.
Yeah. I'll say that too. Yeah. Overkill. Newman. Oh man, too much.
But the first thing we talk about in Art Bell number 4 is going to be the crystal skulls.
Oh yeah. Okay, you be sure to, because I know you really wanted to talk about that, and that'll definitely have to be the first thing we talk about. Make sure you remind me. We hit a little bit on Edgar Casey too. I didn't get to Gordon Michael Scallion. You know what? Hold on. No, I'm going to talk real quick about this.
Go ahead.
Because and it'll be quick too, because he's a charlatan. Listen, Gordon Michael Scallion, probably still alive, but he might not have the platform. I don't know if he is, but he had the platform of Coast to Coast. Art Bell was into Earth Changes. It was a big part of what Art Bell did. It was the only side of the Art Bell show that I just really didn't care too much to listen to. I wanted the paranormal. I wanted that kind of stuff. But he would occasionally have on these guests like Gordon Michael Scallion, who would talk about the Earth Changes and like you talked about, earthquakes too.
Yeah, well, it always bothered me when he was on, because he would usually be on as well after a major earthquake. Like in Mexico City, we had a 7.2, and then that's the first of the series of earthquakes we're going to have. And the last one always ended up here in LA, and I'm like, I don't want to hear that. But he reminded me a lot of Major Ed Dames.
Yeah.
Where it's going to be, we're going to have a kill shot. And it's just like his material just never materialized.
Right. Yes. He said, go ahead.
Well, it's kind of like throwing darts at a dartboard. Yeah. You're probably going to hit certain things.
Right.
Because they're naturally going to happen.
Well, exactly. And that's what got me. Like the guest that he had on, like Gordon Michael Scallion, who could kind of pull information that happens on kind of a regular basis, like the earthquakes. But he was always about the fault line there on the California coast. And his thing was the land was going to fall off the West Coast. In accordance with all of the ice melting and all that, all of the water was going to rise, and there was only going to be certain places you can go. And he had a map. And of course, you could get this map for some money if you sent away for the map, and you would know locations you can go to be safe. But it was stuff like that. And
he was also in contact with the U.S. Geological Survey. And that always cracked me up. I'm like, yeah, so am I. Every time I log on to my computer, right. I can look them up and be in touch with them as well.
Yes. Again, grasping onto something to back up your story and make you look more legitimate when that was something anybody could have done. You know what I mean? Let's check the earthquakes today. And like you said, anybody would know that there's a progression of smaller earthquakes that come after the big one, no matter what. So again, throwing darts at a dartboard, knowing that. So anyways, I had to bring up Gordon Michael Scallion because that map always drove me crazy. And Art was always talking about how, oh, I won't fall into the ocean, will I? And I'm just like going, dude, you're gonna be fine. It just always cracked me up. But something I didn't, it was the lower point of the Art Bell shows. But anyway, yeah, not interesting at all. Elizabeth Clare Prophet, same category, cult folks. I'm trying to remember. I know the name. I'm sure Dave does too, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, but I don't remember the info behind her.
Yeah. And, you know, as soon as I saw that and cult folks, we haven't even touched on Hail Bop. You know, I don't even know if we want to do that, but there's just so much still.
OBEs, MUFON, like you said, Crystal Skulls.
And we wanted to touch again on Father Malachi Martin.
So listen, we'll get to him. We'll get to him. This is an ongoing series. I don't know how often we'll do it. I don't know if a weekly show is too much. I don't think me and Dave talking paranormal every week is too much, but I'll talk to Dave about that.
Well, at least do once a month.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we'd like to touch on some old films too, like Sherlock Holmes and Charlie Chan, Mr. Moto and stuff. So I think we'll end up incorporating things like that too into our shows. So, but yeah, we are at 9:30. It flew by again. Stay tuned for episode 4 very, very soon. Check out Dave's link underneath for his channel for some gardening. Right, Dave?
Absolutely. Every week.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just type in my name to YouTube. It'll come up.
Oh yeah, of course. You know, he's one of the biggest gardening channels out there now. You know, he's growing by leaps and bounds is what he's doing. But listen, thanks each and every one of you. Paul P. Kreisman just coming in. Veronica Cartwright is supposed to play well-known psychic June Ahern sometime soon. June Ahern, that's the Ronald Reagan's Psychic to the Stars. Am I wrong?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just got here. LOL. Good night. Okay. Well, go back and re-listen. It was a great show, Ryan. Anyways, Dave, as always, from west of the Rockies, me from east of the Rockies, and everyone in between and around the world.
Good night, America.
Yeah. Good night, America.